So this is what you have to understand, that, if this is left unchecked, it creates this sort of toxic environment where instead of showing the best of ourselves, we start showing the worst of ourselves, where we get so infatuated with the people that we're supporting that we're ready to discredit anyone who they're up against, and we're ready to take these fights to the grave. We're ready to hold all that bitterness inside of us, and that's not really what our community should be representative of.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to GameKheyl. I'm Naveed, and we have Nosherwan Khan here with us today. Before we get into what this man does, what he is all about, what his mystique is, let me just give you a few updates as to what we've been up to here at GameKheyl. Well, we've moved houses. There's nothing in the background. Again, this is something that we need to fix and get up to speed real soon. And also, we have been trying to get a few things in motion. Again, there's a lot of things that we are currently in the middle of. Hopefully there will be a few updates in the next interview, so to say. But coming back to our guest today, Nosherwan Khan, this man has seen it all, done it all. By that, what I mean is he has done game reviews, he does commentary, he has a lot of analysis. In fact, for the last half hour and so, we have just been discussing things as to what are the possibilities of GameKheyl, what are the possibilities of FGC community in Pakistan, and so many other things. And before we dive, and in fact, this interview feels more like a segue more than an interview, because it's a running conversation. So I think we're just going to pick off from where we started. So Nosherwan, it's absolute pleasure to have you here, and hope that everyone watching will enjoy the ride that we are up for. Well, Nosherwan Khan, before we start, I would actually pass you the mic and let you introduce yourself. Just give us a brief of who you are and what you do.
All right, thank you so much, Naveed. So as you've mentioned, my name is Nosherwan Khan. I go by the handle of SilverFox online and in the community world. I started a little while ago with the FGC community in Pakistan. I believe somewhere around like August, I got into the community active. The reason for that was because as your earlier guest mentioned, Babakar Haider, Soul Dragger, he mentioned that he had hosted a tournament for the King of Fighters 14. And I have been interested in the FGC community in Pakistan for a while now. I've just been an observer. But I decided to go and visit the premises of that tournament. And when I was there was just so much energy in the environment. There was just so much going on over there, and it was so exciting that I just started calling out from the crowd. I started shouting, making noises and everything, and that somehow caught the attention of Soul Dragger, and he brought me onto the mic where I started commenting with him. And as the rest is history. After that, I've been co-commentating with Soul Dragger for ever since then. And it's been a great pleasure to be able to see the FGC community up close and personal like this. I've been involved in people with Tekken. I've been involved with people in the King of Fighters circuit. And I've sort of like gelled into the community in such a way that I feel that this thing is something that's really special. Our country, Pakistan, our community is one that is, has recently shown to the world that we've got so much potential and we've got so much to give. And the whole idea right now is to be able to take that to the next level, bring out more players of the same vein, to be able to come out, to be able to show the world that, we're not just adept in one game. We've got all sorts of things that we are capable of, and we can bring on the best sort of competition in the world, the best sort of tournament play in the world that, just takes it to the next level. So that's basically me in a nutshell. On the side, professionally, I work as a content creator and a content lead at my workplace. My job is mostly involved in working with audio, video content, and written content. So I have expertise across the board. So that's basically what I try to do in my work time, and in my spare time, just watching stuff, playing games, trying to making a couple of videos on YouTube. So, that's basically me. So thank you so much once again for having me here, Naveed.
one thing I'd say about this man is he can do everything I can, only better. So that's basically that in a nutshell. He also does podcasts for his in his professional as one of his professional endeavors. So there's definitely a thing or two I can learn from him. And this is something I really appreciate. Also, the fact that you've given a lot of insight into how the community is. We actually discussed before this interview. We were talking about content. We were talking about communities, how esports is growing, and what you just touched upon is something that is truly magical, and the world is recognizing the true talent of Pakistani gaming, especially when it comes to the FGC community. I mean, before 2019, that is something that has absolutely shattered all preconceived notions about gaming in this country. Arslan Ash being someone who was recognized by ESPN as Esports Athlete of the Year, which says something because he's going up against individuals like Tifu or like Ninja, like everyone else in the Dota community, everyone's in every conceivable game possible. You have a Pakistani gamer who came out of nowhere and absolutely smashed the scene. So, and oddly enough, you have guys who are just popping up out of nowhere. I mean, in our interview with Babakar Heather, he mentioned one name after another, a lot of new up and coming guys in this community. So there is a thriving scene in Pakistan that absolutely no one knew about. And you being someone who has been vicariously looking at different sporting events, looking at different different tournaments, different gaming scenes, how did you first get to know about how this Tekken scene was operating in Pakistan? And secondly, once you got to know about it, how did you get invested into that? I mean, being someone who saw that and jumped on an event that was happening and instantaneously became part of the community, it sounds very fascinating. But at the same time, I would want to understand that first interaction of you with this community. How did you get to know about it?
All right. So before I talk about how I got into this community, I like to sort of get into how I got into fighting games in general. So I've been playing fighting games ever since I was a kid, right? It's well documented. I've tried to make it known everywhere that the very first fighting game that I had was Tekken 2, not the third one, the second one. And I'd been playing fighting games ever since. I've been interested in Street Fighter and Tekken and all this other stuff. And just like a lot of other people around the world, I was motivated to look further into the competitive scene of FGC in general by Evo Moment 37, as it's known. It's when in Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, one of the world's best players, Daigo Umehara, did an amazing parry of a super against one of the US's top players, Justin Wong, right? And with just one pixel of life, he was able to pull back that match and eke out a win. And that is what started me down this road. And I started investing my time into finding out what the FGC is, how does it operate, looking into players, looking into sports. Evo, I've been watching way back since the days of, like, I believe 2010, 2012. I remember Evo back then. So me getting in touch with the Pakistani FGC actually happened like a lot of other people online. Was when I found out Arslan Ash, a player that no one knew about, a Pakistani player, had gone to Japan and had won Evo Japan over there in, I believe, 2019, 2020. So when I found that out, I was shocked. I was surprised because I knew what the FGC was. I knew what it was like, the sort of systems that it had, the sort of games that were played over there. And then I found out that, oh my God, there's a Pakistani that went there. And, you know, the only one that's over there, the first time that they're going over there, and they just completely trounce everything. What just happened? And that's how I got to know more about it. And that's how I started delving further into the Pakistani FGC. One of my main interactions with the FGC was when I decided to sort of look into it. What's happening over here? I found out that there is an arcade called Maniac's Gaming Hub here in Lahore. And they were pretty active on social media, on YouTube, on Twitch. And I started watching their streams and I started figuring out, all right, where are they located? I want to go and I want to see this place. So about, like, I believe this was before the pandemic in 2019, I would make very rare visits over there. Once or twice, I think at about a gap of like a couple of months. And I started looking at the scene, got in, talked to the owner a little bit. And he seemed like a really nice guy, Zamin Abbas. And from there on, I knew sort of like started plugging myself in, starting getting to know, okay, what players are there, what players are playing, and, what's their story, what's their strengths and all that. And I believe, like I mentioned earlier, my entrance proper was like this year, where I started sitting on the commentating desk with Soul Dragger and talking about the FGC, commentating matches, learning more about the players over here. And that's when I really started connecting with everything. And I believe that that was, that's something that I don't think a lot of people abroad would understand. Like they don't really know that sort of ground reality over here. But once you get plugged into it, you realize that this scene is, there's so much potential brewing underneath all that we see. There are people who come around from different corners of the country. And all you need to do is just say that, all right, we're having an event, right? These players are going to be there. You have Arslan Ash, you have Atif Bhatt, Awais Honey, you have Hira Malik. All these, name-worthy players are over there. And then you'll find people coming from all corners of Pakistan to that event, to that one place, to play some of the best players in the world, not just in Pakistan, in the world. So that's what really is amazing about it, that you get to learn that there's so many people who love this, who love the FGC, who love the games that they play, who are here because they want to be, not because of some monetary gain or some, other preconceived notion. It's because they know what this game means. They've invested their time, their heart, their soul into it, and they want to keep carrying forward with it. That's when you see the beauty of this community and you see what sort of potential it has, because people here have been playing games for ages. You have people who have been playing King of Fighters since, back in the days when 95 was big, 96 was big. Like people who would play 98 up until this day. You have people who played Tekken 3 in the arcades back when I was a kid. Back when I used to visit Pakistan and hang out with my cousins, and they'd just take me to the arcade and we'd play and we'd have a great time. And that arcade would be full. This was back before the 2000s. And it was just an amazing time. So there's a lot of potential and a lot that our players have in this ecosystem. It's just that we haven't really been as prominent. And now that we're getting that chance, we're working towards bringing the best to the world.
There's a few things that I would want to discuss with you. First and foremost, the fact that there is a certain thing that is being said about certain fighting styles. I mean, I'm not as invested, for the lack of a better term, in the Tekken scene. So, but what I've been able to recognize from my own research is that each region in the world has been given a certain attribute or a style of fighting. So, for instance, the Korean players have a certain style of play. You have the Japanese, you have the Americans, the Europeans, most of them operating in a certain style that they've incorporated in their game. Is there a Pakistani style, if any? And if there is, what do you think is going to take for the international community to counteract and make themselves better? Because from what I've been able to gather, you have players like Chikurin and others coming to Pakistan and trying to learn this Pakistani, quote unquote, the Pakistani style. So you being someone who's been in and around the scene and someone who now has the first-hand experience of seeing these competitors play, do you think there is a Pakistani style? And if there is, how to beat it?
Okay, so I don't pretend to be an expert at the community, right? So I can only tell what knowledge that I have from the little time that I've seen everyone. I believe, obviously, if Arslan Ash would be one of the best people to tell you what the Pakistani style would be and what players look abroad. But from my experience, what I've seen is that there are a couple of a couple of styles, a couple of terms that are used when describing styles. There you have the rush down, which is very aggressive, just going in your face and, not caring about what happens, just trying to have offense all day. Then you have turtling. You have the defensive style, where you bide your time, you sort of like, look for opportunities, look for openings, and try to play as defensive as you can. And then you have something that's akin to like the middle bit in between, which is more technical. This deals with a lot of fundamentals. This deals with sort of, yeah. The countering approach mostly works with turtling. That's your defensive style. But the technical style would mostly be to be able to learn, like really integrate into the mechanics and try to look for tricks, trying to look for something new, something special to be able to show. Yes, So you could say something about the meta, exactly. So I believe that in our community we focus quite a lot on the meta. We focus on what the good matchups are, right? Which player does good, which player does not do good against certain characters, and how the sort of how you can take advantage of this one trick, this one thing that nobody's paying attention to, and just run with it. So we're more of the technical / rushdown style, where a lot of our players, a lot of local players who don't have that sort of training and that sort of discipline would obviously want to rush you down. But the ones that learn, they know, all right, we're going to play technical. We're going to come with this sort of like trick, this sort of like ace in the hole, this back pocket pick, and we're just going to roll with it. So, and then they pick out some amazing, amazing matches because of it. Because even if you look at some of our local matches, they're on the caliber of like grand finals of any big tournament that you find abroad.
So I believe there was some sort of commotion that was happening on Twitter a few days ago. There was Arslan Ash and there was Knee. And there were certain words that were exchanged, especially about picking certain characters, giving you certain advantages. So what's your perspective on that entire debacle, or whatever you would like to call it?
All right, so from what I gather, it was mostly because of, it was talk on this one Tekken player called JDCR, who is one of the biggest players in Korea. And Knee is considered to be one of the best Tekken players in the world, if not the best. And Knee and Arslan Ash obviously have had rivalries. So there was this one comment that Arslan Ash did mention, was that JDCR, the player, lost because of his loyalty to the character that he was playing, which was not a really strong character in this current season, this current meta of Tekken. And I believe Holy Knee took that as a bit of a dig and thought that was like a sort of like an insult, or some sort of like aggressive sort of like coming on, or maybe that sort of thing, which is why that sort of heated debate happened between each other. And obviously we have our Pakistani fanboys who are obviously going to be like, all right, Sade mulk da banda hai, like Arslan Ash is our boy, we're gonna go and we're gonna go and support him. And Knee is one player that you have to admit that he is one of the best, right? And it doesn't matter who you are, Knee is a person that everyone has respect for. And anyone who tries to come at him, obviously, Knee's going to shut them down, and everyone's going to be with them. That, yes, absolutely, you're talking to one of the biggest players in the world, and you need to know where you're coming from. So I believe that in terms of the whole context, Arslan was obviously trying to make a point, right? He was trying to sort of like highlight it in a certain way, but I believe there was something that was lost in translation, and Knee wasn't really he sort of took it in another way. So there was a bit of miscommunication over there. And obviously people will love to say that, like Knee likes to create drama and everything, but I think, you have to give him the benefit of the doubt, is because he might not know where Arslan was coming from. He might not, because obviously you have to look at it. If anything, Arslan is talking about his countryman, JDCR, right? So just like our boys would come to defend Arslan, he would probably come to defend JDCR. No matter how many times he plays him or beats him, that's his boy. And, it's over there that, we need to be able to clear the air and clear the lines. Whatever happens, we have to admit that these guys are world-class players, right? And at the same time, they're human. So they have that propensity for making mistakes. And that shouldn't diminish anything from the way that they play, the sort of accomplishment that they have.
In UFC, in the actual combat sports, or even in the virtual side of things, in the EA UFC community, having these kind of flashpoint moments create for the drama, for the anticipation, or maybe even just a spectacle of something coming together after so much tension and animosity. Do you think that kind of thing translates well into Tekken scene? So for instance, if something like that ended up becoming a full-scale dramatic argument, do you think it does anything good when it comes to bringing eyeballs to Tekken? Or do you think it's just another nuisance at the very least?
I'd say it's a double-edged sword. at the very best, because you have to understand that, yes, obviously this sort of stuff does spice things up. It's like, oh wow, these guys, they're facing off against each other after talking smack to them each other online. Let's see who comes out on top and everything. And you're like, oh, this is like really serious. They're not playing around. They're not having fun. This is war. This is bloody war. And that's where the sort of like fun factor comes out of it. But then at the same time, you also have to realize that this is, it's also a very sort of like toxic sort of environment that you're creating. And it might not seem like that initially, but when this thing obviously does grow and it's left unchecked, and this is where I give credit to Knee for, because he checked that and he shut that down right over there, right? So with his response, he shut down any sort of like, toxicity that was about to come out of it. And so this is what you have to understand, that, if this is left unchecked, it creates this sort of toxic environment where instead of showing the best of ourselves, we start showing the worst of ourselves, where we get so infatuated with the people that we're supporting that we're ready to discredit anyone who they're up against, and we're ready to take these fights to the grave. We're ready to hold all that bitterness inside of us, and that's not really what our community should be representative of. It should be that, the way that I've seen it is that there's a lot of love that people have for the game. That's the way that I take it. That's the way I take everything from every player over here. Whether there's a guy who comes in from Gujranwala, or whether there's a guy who is married and, has a wife and a kid at home, but they're still coming to play Tekken or King of Fighters or any other game. It's that dedication and that love for the game that shows to me. But then again, that might not be the way that everyone else takes it, because of their attitude, because of their toxicity, because of the things that they've said or the way that they've said it, because of the community that supports them. It might show that, we're not really the best at, like, we're not all hugs and, friendliness and all that. We're more about the drama and more about the, the vitriol to sort of like build in. We want the spice, and it doesn't really highlight our strengths. So yeah, of course, in the short term, having that sort of stuff, having that sort of beef would be good for the game, would be good for views. But it's that it needs to happen in an environment that is constantly in check, where players know that they come at it with a sense of responsibility.
Well, so here's one of the things that a lot of people, especially a lot of gamers, struggle with, and that is exposure. And for any sport in Pakistan that is not cricket, you struggle for attention. I mean, news channels are not going to give you coverage. You're not going to get enough likes or shares on your YouTube channel, on your streams, if you're not someone who is in the public eye. If you're not someone who is quote unquote a cricketer. I mean, you have individuals struggling in other disciplines, in other sports, and when you talk about esports in general, you're just the runt of the litter, because kheloge kudoge hoge kharab. I mean, that's the perception with which this certain generation has grown up with. So it's very difficult at this point in time, with the current mindset or the current structures that we have, to facilitate individuals and get them the right exposure. So in your opinion, if you're a gamer, if you're a streamer from Pakistan who wants to amplify their impact and has the potential to be a superstar someday, like some of the best streamers in the world, which I'm very certain that there are individuals who exist here at this given moment. But if you look at the individuals who are the flag bearers of the community right now, without naming names, the content, if you look at the content, it's like every other news channel that you would see. It's breaking news, there is rivalry, there is roasting, there's every conceivable idea of just, putting someone on a seat and just throwing eggs towards them. So that is one model that a lot of individuals feel has gained traction, or maybe that's one way to go about selling content. But like you mentioned, it brews toxicity. It's not something that helps grow the community. So where do you strike that balance? Where do you run off with your own individuality and try to make a say for yourself? Simultaneously, how do you grow the community and make things better for everyone? Because right now, we are the runt of the litter.
Right. So it's good that, we're talking about this because, exposure is something that I feel that a lot of our players do struggle with. And you're absolutely right about that. If you're not a cricketer, it's going to be astronomically difficult for you to get out in front of people. But the way that I look at it is that you have to understand, first of all, who are you catering to? It's not the people who come in from their work and, sit down in front of their TV to watch a cricket game. It's not people like that. It's not people who drive in cars or anything like that. It's the young generation. The young generation is a lot more plugged into their social medias, their phones, their sort of content sort of cycle. They're big on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere. So I believe that, sort of angling yourself towards that area is something that every player needs to do. They need to be active on social media, and they need to know which areas would get them, which areas they want to focus on, right? That's the first thing. The second is that we know that, the sort of, news that comes out of Pakistan, or the sort of scene that's in Pakistan, and all right, this is the beef between these two people, or this is the activity that's happening, this is the tournament and all that. But then at the same time, we can also look to what other players abroad are doing and sort of look into that. Right now, one of the biggest things that's going on in Pakistan right now is that everyone has their own stream room, right? Everyone has their own game room where they're streaming their games from, right? And, people tune in, people watch, they clip it, put it on YouTube, and, try to show that, all right, this is the great combo that I did, or this is the, the match that I won, and, this is what it is. But I believe that, we also need to diversify some of our content. If you look at some players like Justin Wong, what they do is they don't just play the game and they don't just clip stuff that they've done. They actually try to make it entertaining for you. They talk about stuff. They try to joke around. They put in some different kinds of content. If you look at people like Maximilian Dude, who is one of the biggest personalities in the FGC around the world, he has created this really amazing sort of content cycle where he's talking about new characters and games that come out. He's talking about his reactions. He is talking about the news that's happening. He's showing his matches. He's showing the sort of games that he plays with his friends. That sort of cycle, I believe, needs to also evolve over here, because right now, obviously, we're the runt of the litter that you mentioned, right? This is something that's new for us. We've really been in the public eye for 2-3 years right now. And we're sort of developing that. Stream rooms have just been coming in because of the pandemic and because it's really inconvenient for people to go to the arcade. And playing at home has become like the new norm that people have, right? Along with that, I believe that, that was like a natural evolution. And with that, obviously, the natural evolution for that also should be that, you create your own branded content. You create unique things for which people would want to subscribe to your channel, would want to check into your channel, check you out, hear what you have to say, keep updated on what you're doing, instead of, like, all right, this is the next tournament that you have, this is the next game that you played, this is the next training session that you had. Over a while, that wouldn't really develop your community. What you need to do is add more value. And this not only comes to the benefit of the players, but to the benefit of content creators and the benefit of commentators like me and Soul Dragger. I also started this sort of initiative back in October, where I started my own YouTube channel, and I wanted to be able to create videos that were very different from what was happening in Pakistan. I wanted to be able to give video essays, analyses, what I feel that, are things that the FGC community sort of should think about, should focus on. And that's how I sort of brought about my content. And that got some really good response from the people that I talked to. They really loved the content. And in the little time that I was able to work on it, I found that, that this is something that people need. And it's something that our players can absolutely do, because they play these games day in, day out. They know the intricate mechanics of it, and they understand games on a fundamental level, something that not a normal person would. And because they have that fundamental knowledge of it, they can apply that to different games, and not just games, different activities, different environments. They could actually implement that into human psychology and sort of make the people aware and at the same time entertain. So that's what I feel that our community sort of, that's the way that it can develop. and bring forth to the world something new. I see that as the next evolution that we have in our content.
I mean, what you've expanded upon is essentially what personally resonated with me a lot, because with GameKheyl, we are in a place where I wouldn't say we're struggling with identity, but we're trying different things and see what sticks. And this trial and error is possibly one of the biggest reasons why the channel has had consistent growth. The only thing the only thing that has worked out in this duration for GameKheyl is the fact that there is constant flow of content that's coming. I mean, we would definitely like to add more chunks to it when certain factors come into play, like the ones we discussed before this interview. So once those things align, I mean, there's a lot of potential with an idea like GameKheyl. And I'm pretty sure there are individuals with better brains and better resources that I have who can absolutely run with this idea. But as long as you don't have that consistency, if you don't have that growth mindset, because not everyone's going to wake up and be a Mr. Beast or like someone who is a regular content creator with millions of views. It took Mr. Beast about 10 years to get to 1 million, and now he's up to, I don't know, 75, 80 million. So in order to get to that one moment of brilliance, I think the creator of Pokemon Go summed it up perfectly. It takes 20 years to create an overnight success. And that's exactly what it is. I mean, so I think in a nutshell, what I can take away from this is being someone who's consistent, try to find your identity, see what sticks. So for instance, someone like yourself, your content may not be for every single person who is out there, but it might be a gamer's dream. That's something that is going to appeal to individuals who are a part of the gaming scene to understand how the game is working. I just checked your channel out very quickly in the background, and I saw your video of, that you've posted for Guilty Gear, and the thumbnail looks amazing. I think this is the one thing that I have to check out, because I've heard a lot about this game, and that's something that appeals to me. So the content is not going to be for everyone, so you don't expect it to blow up, but at the same time understand the limitations. So perhaps if you have a channel with a limited number of subscribers, you are going to expect a certain number of interviews. So for instance, this interview may be a niche. It doesn't matter to me if it gets 1,000 views or 2,000 views or even 100 views, as long as the relevant people are watching this and maybe someone can pick apart a single idea and that helps them out. So this is another thing that I discussed with Brown Lad Gaming a few days ago, and he summed it up perfectly. It's like, the moment you stop chasing goals that are tangible, like I need X number of subscribers, I need X amount of monetization with the channel, and you start focusing on the quality of the content that you're trying to pitch. And if there's a bigger audience, the more the merrier. But the focus again is to be the best, to present the best content that you have within the resources that you have. And when the resources, I just heard some cats fighting outside, but never mind that. But when you have enough resources, you start pulling them in and just make things better for yourself. I don't know what's going on, but I think we'll roll with the punches here. So essentially what we've touched on is a lot of community, a lot of gaming itself in Pakistan, how to go about creating content. So you and Soul Dragger, Mr. Babakar Heather, our previous guest, you guys have been working together for a bit. I believe that experience is something that is going to help you put your name out even further and explore more games in the future. But for someone who has had a very short span of time in live broadcasting, you've been able to you've been able to carry yourself very well. And for me, who's been in and around the scene of UFC, I mean, even though it wasn't something that was in physical proximity, it was still an experience with which you have to go about thinking about content, figuring out how fighters approach things, picking stuff out. I just want to understand how you approach going into an event, the commentary that you're going to do. So do you have a script in mind? Do you have anecdotes in mind, or you just play it play it off the cuff? How do you approach this?
Okay, so I don't know. It might surprise a lot of people, but when you do commentary, it's basically off the wing. You don't have any script that you work with, right? It's basically, and I thought that I wouldn't know how to do it properly. I always thought that I'm watching stuff, and how am I going to be able to talk about it live, like on the fly, and come up with this sort of stuff, right, while the game is going on? But I believe that the thing that I did was unconsciously, this is something that I've done like a lot with a lot of other stuff, is that I've unconsciously sort of like absorbed a lot of content and a lot of ways that how that content works. So I used to watch YouTube back when there was the ban on YouTube, and even then that couldn't stop me from watching the content that I wanted to watch. I'd stick with it, I'd watch it, and I've seen how coming out of that ban back in the 2012s, we sort of like developed our content as we went on. So Pakistani YouTube was started from nothing to now like something that is like has a big market and has an ecosystem. When I got into commentary, I had watched people commentating Dota, commentating fighting games, commentating all sorts of stuff. And I saw, how they worked with it. Some of the commentators I found like really analytical and really, nice to be able to watch. Some had, information that, was specific to commentary. People like James Chen and Sajim, who are like big, Jite, like right up there in commentary. And then you had people like IFC Yipes, who just went all out. He just had fun, and he came up with like the weirdest stuff. And you could tell that he really loved to be able to talk about the game, and he had that fun personality about him. So all those things sort of like coalesced within me. And when I went into commentary, I started off with, like the basic play-by-play, which is something that, you can do. And a lot of people would tell me, all right, you should be breaking this down. You should be telling them, all right, what the strategy was or what this was or what that was. Well, that's something that I would have to learn, obviously, and, be able to implement. But then again, my own personal style I found was more talking about play-by-play and then interspersing it with, my own bit of humor, my sort of like, my anecdotes and stuff like that. With Waqar, the best thing that we used to do was that, like we would be co-commentating, and that would make things a lot easier for him and for me, because then we'd play off of each other. He'd be talking about, and commentary, what we do is basically when you have two of them, there's one person who's called the color commentator and one who's a lot more analytical, talking about, the moves and, what they pulled out, what they did, what they didn't do. And the other one who's sort of like hyping it up and, giving sort of like an audience perspective about the person who wouldn't know about the fighting game, but would be like really excited to watch it. And, since we both had this sort of love for the game, he had a lore about the community, I had a lore about the game. So we sort of like bounced off of each other. We played to our strengths, and that's how we work together. When I go into a commentary, the most important thing that for me is that I want to be able to see everything. I want to be able to like talk about everything. I want to just go nonstop. I want to be so hooked into the game that it just flows out. And that's absolutely what happens, is that I get excited about the things that happen, and I just watch it as a viewer, and I just go like, like in a normal cricket match when you would, just say, how's that, when there's a big shot or something like that. So I'd just be taking that sort of energy along. And I believe that is the way that fighting games should be appreciated, because you have to see that even a commentator, right? They're a person, and they have that sort of like, that excitement about the game itself. And it comes out, and I think that's the best tool that you can use to be able to be a part of the commentary.
There's one thing that a lot of people don't, I think for a lot of people who are involved in commentary tend to take for granted, is that you have to be a fan of the craft if you want to say something on it. I mean, the energy that you have is going to go through the microphone into the viewer's ears, and that's going to translate into what they feel, because the reference that you mentioned, especially in the wrestling side of things, color commentary and play-by-play commentary, I think that's the perfect analogy, because you need someone who can infuse those anecdotes, who can absolutely pick things apart, make someone look like a heel or make someone look like a babyface. You absolutely have to ensure that the person who is fighting right now, his style is being translated into words that are viscerally experienced by everyone who is there. So who is actually watching that stream. So I think a lot of onus and responsibility falls on the shoulders of the individuals who are watching this. Because those who are aspiring to be commentators, because what you have to understand is, even though your mood is reflective of what a person plays, but sometimes, and I think this is taken for granted by a lot of individuals, including myself, what you don't recognize is when you're talking about someone's fight, they're essentially putting themselves on a pedestal for you to commentate on what they're doing. So you have to be very mindful of what you say. But simultaneously, you remember if that particular combo, if you get the timing down to a T, that might be the best moment of that person's life. I mean, I remember there was this fight in a UFC event. I think it was Cage Rage, one of the Cage Rage events, and one of our co-commentators was actually fighting. So I was just generally very invested because he was a very good friend of mine. And the moment he won, we just absolutely screamed our lungs out because the guy he defeated was 23-0. He didn't lose a single fight. And out of nowhere, he pops up a jab, uppercut, hook, lands him on the cage, gives him ground and pound and finishes the fight. We absolutely lost our minds. And in fact, that was a slip, left hook, uppercut, and an elbow as well. I don't know how he pulled that out, but it absolutely, like, even talking about it right now has enthused me a bit. So that's essentially the magic that you're trying to capture when you're doing commentary. So it's important that you play it by the ear. I've made certain mistakes, rather than mentioning them on here, what I would say is just be very mindful of what you say. Simultaneously, if there is a word on your which fits the sequence well, roll with it. But don't use curse words, for the love of God.
Absolutely. See, I feel that that's exactly what's important when learning about commentary. Is that number one? Obviously, you're watching the game and you're just as hyped to see something as anyone else would be, right? And you have that sort of excitement, and that excitement translates into what you're saying, right? At the same time, you also need to make sure that what you're saying and what you're doing is done in a way that reflects positively on you, on the players, on the event that you're hosting, on the game that you're hosting, to anyone who's watching, basically. Because when you're commentating, you're not just yourself. You're not just representing yourself, you're representing everything that has to do with that game in that moment. There are going to be players who you have to respect. There are going to be organizers that you have to respect. There are going to be platforms that you have to respect. And there are going to be games that you have to respect, and the audience that you have to respect. You have to understand the importance and the boundaries of each and every one. And then you have to keep that all in mind and, go forward with yourself. It's not as difficult as it sounds, but because eventually, when you start off with it, it becomes sort of like a habit. When you come onto the mic, when you come onto the camera, you adopt this sort of persona, this sort of, it's like wearing clothes. It's like wearing a sort of uniform. You come into it, right? And then you're comfortable with it and you can roll with it. But developing that is important because you want to make sure that, you do things that represent the best of you and the best of everything that you are a part of.
I think one of the easiest ways to describe what you just said is it's the same way. You're not the same person when you're at the office. You're not the same person when you're with your friends, with your family, in and around kids. It's just learning how to deal with that one particular part of thing. And you're set. I mean, it'll take some practice. There'll always be errors. You can never be perfect 100% of the time, unless you're the Bane. Shout out to the Bane, one of the best commentators out there. That guy used to do. In fact, he was actually on the first GameKheyl event. Now he's covering actual MMA events in Canada right now. So big ups to the Bane, Ben Davis. So again, so like you mentioned, you have to make the person the star of the show. At the same time, just have fun doing it. I mean, that's the best way to explain it, because otherwise, no person in their right mind can sit in front of a screen for 17 hours, run play by play, if you're not invested into it by yourselves. Background. There's one thing that you've done previously, and this is one thing when we were discussing your profile, really stood out for me, and that is doing video game reviews for one of the biggest publications in Pakistan. So how do you approach reviewing video games, and how was that experience like?
All right, so video game reviewing was something that it started off when I was in university. I found out that, Spider Magazine, which is a magazine over here in Pakistan, they were looking for people to review games for them. And me being a college student, I was like, all right, I'll try my hand at this because I'm studying and, this would be good. A little side money would be good. And obviously I'm interested in games and everything. So I tried that. And the experience from that was that I worked with them for about like 6-7 years, which was a really good experience. it taught me a lot about what are the things that you're supposed to look into within a game, right? And how to sort of like deconstruct it and make sure that the person knows what they're buying into. A lot of people place emphasis on graphics, place emphasis on gameplay and everything, but more importantly, it's about how the game feels, and that's very difficult to describe, because unless you have that game in your hands, you won't be able to tell people. They won't know how it sort of controls. They won't know how strong or how tactile the responsiveness is, right? They won't know how the controls work. Are they floaty? Are they tight? Are they like this or like that? So that's it to individual sort of like feedback. The other thing is that, how the game makes you feel on a personal level is that when you sit down and you play a game, and then when you leave it, how did you feel? Can you honestly say that you had a good time? When you sit down and you play a game, how long do you play it before you feel like you need to take a break, or how long before it becomes a chore, right? What are the things that appeal to gamers? What are the things that they do right in a game in terms of, how it's presented, how the story goes along, how the visuals go along, how the mechanics work? Are the games that are they made with good balancing in mind, such as like how the Dark Souls series is, or can they be completely broken like Skyrim, for example? Because there's these things obviously that you need to consider when talking about a game and deconstructing it. If I were to maybe talk about games like let's say UFC, right? So UFC, like I think the conversation that we had earlier was that UFC, as I mentioned, was a very fluid game. It wasn't like your Tekkens or your Mortal Kombats or your Street Fighters, in that you had to approach the game with a certain feel, right? You had to have a feel for the movement, because not every punch is going to be the same. Not every kick is going to be the same, right? And not every opportunity is going to be the same. You have to adapt, and you have to sort of play in the moment. And that's something that's kind of difficult to convey to someone who is used to Tekken, who realizes that, all right, if I press 3-3-4, it's a 3-3-4. It's a kick. It's a left kick, and a right kick. So, it's because to them, that's like a formulaic process. But in UFC, that wouldn't be so. It would be very different. It also depends on where the person is in terms of positioning, where you are in terms of positioning, the physics of it, the sort of mechanics of it. And that sort of stuff is what differentiates different games. And you have to look at it like that, and you have to be able to explain it. One of the other things that also comes into light, and unfortunately UFC has also been a part of it, is that, games contain bugs and glitches, and you have to understand how much of that can you just laugh off, how much can be like, okay, and how much is like, all right, this is something that, it completely ruins the game for me, or it's something that completely bugs it out or breaks it break. So it's those things that you need to understand, and you need to be able to deconstruct. Playing games is easy for a lot of people, but being able to understand what a game is, how it's supposed to be played, and how to be able to, tell other people what it's about, that's where the difficult part lies.
So just to have an understanding, I mean, let's say there's a video game that has come out in any genre. So for you to be able to understand that this game has ABC things associated with it, if you like the story, if the graphics are good, if the gameplay is smooth, if the narrative is good, if there is cohesiveness. So obviously the most important thing for you is to experience that game while playing it. So when you're playing a video game, what's the first thing that strikes to you? What's the first thing that comes to your mind that, okay, so this thing needs to be in order, like not as a reviewer, but as a video game player? What's the first thing that comes to your mind in terms of your own set of expectations for a video game?
Well, I believe that, there are a couple of things that would obviously come to mind. I don't think I can pin it down to like one. There are a couple of things that sort of like go hand in hand. Now, I believe the very first things that you sort of like experience within the game is the user interface, the UI, right? And that needs to be as clear as it can be, right? As obvious as it can be. because your user interface, if your players are not able to understand it, you're not able to navigate it, they're going to be at a loss of what to do and how to do it, and what the constraints of the game are. Right. So let's say if you're playing something like The Witcher, which again I'm playing these days again, and I've gotten my sister into it. So if you're playing The Witcher, right, and you can't see your health bar, you can't see the prompts, you can't see what happens, like the map or something, right? Or you don't see the indicators of things that you're supposed to pick up, or the things that you're supposed to go for. I believe that is one of the things that, is going to impact your feel for the game, right? And that's what needs to be really crystal clear. So even in The Witcher, if you're at a distance from someone, and like let's say in an MMO, or even so, if you're at a distance from someone, the name sort of pops up on top of their head. If you're fighting them, a health bar pops on top of their head. That gives you raw feedback in terms of user interface on what exactly the dynamics of your engagement are. I mean, you can interact with this person, and there'll be maybe a shopkeeper, and then you can interact with this person, and then you have to fight them. It's a monster. You got to kill them. So UI is one of the most important things, and if a good UI can take you a long way. But more importantly, after the UI comes the next important thing is the mechanics, basically. Or let's say, the feel of the game. Mechanics is is a bit too on the side, but the feel of the game, how does it control in your hands? Is it slippery? Is it loose? Is it tight? The gun that you're holding in Call of Duty, right? How does it feel when you shoot it? How does it respond? Do you get that sort of tactile feedback? The recoil is good. The sort of aim compensation is good. The sort of sound effects that it has, is it good, right? That's what's important. And then after that comes sort of mechanics, sort of gameplay. In that, all right, if I hit this person, right? If I hit them, let's say, on the side, or if I hit them square in the middle, how does that react? How is that different? Is this fair? Is this unfair? That happens a lot in fighting games as well, where we debate on hitboxes. All right, where did that move hit from? Or, it was a cross up, or I didn't even know that this move could do this. So those mechanics, if they're consistent, if they're solid, and if there's something that you're going to get a guaranteed result for, if it's like that, then that's what you say it has good mechanics. That's when you say that the game is good, because what you expect from it is what it delivers, and it doesn't throw a curveball to you. So I feel that a lot of these things sort of coalesce, and when you get further into it, then it's about things making sense. Which is another thing, and that's the more you get into it, the more complex that it gets. But I believe that the user interface, the feel for the game, and the mechanics themselves, these are the first three things that you would notice as a video game player.
So let me throw you a curveball here. I mean, you've done reviews for, let's say, 6 to 7 years, like you've mentioned. Has there been ever a review from your end that was not very encouraging, but that ended up being an unpopular opinion?
I believe so. I mean, I can't really recall it right now, but being able to say that, all right, this is my opinion on this game, it's not really the best, but then it turns out that it's something else, and vice versa, right? So I don't think that's happened much. However, I will say this, that there's this whole fanboyism with regards to games as well, as we talked about with players. So this whole fanboyism that, all right, this is a game from a particular series, it has to be good. That sort of also turns you blind to some of the shortcomings that are pretty evident. And that happens for, even though it's played as day to a lot of people. I personally am a fan of RPGs as well. I like playing RPGs. And one of the most contentious things that I've ever seen is that people really praise a game called Final Fantasy VII a lot. They say that that's one of the best games of all time, one of the most amazing role-playing games that you can ever play in this lifetime. And I say, yeah, it's good, but it has its shortcomings. And some of the characters I do not like. The main character, Cloud, I do not like, which is something that I can literally be canceled for online for a lot of people. Yes, that's sacrilegious to a lot of people, because the game has been held in such high regard that it's now sacrosanct. Anything you say against it, even if it's just a personal opinion, can be taken in such a negative light that people will be at your throat for it. But again, games do come with a high degree of subjectivity to it as well. There are games that you either love or you hate, and there are some games that completely divide the community down between the middle. There have been movies like that. There have been a lot of things like that. So it's safe to say that, games are going to be like that as well. What I enjoy playing might not be what you enjoy playing. And one of the examples for that is that I had in my, as I was growing up, was that I used to play RPGs, and I had a cousin who was big on like action games, right? So whenever I would play the RPG Persona 4, he would ridicule me for it, and he was like 10 years younger than me, and he would still ridicule me for it, that why do you play these games, they suck and all that. And I'm like, dude, this is just your opinion, obviously, and I know the fans of this game would definitely want to kill you, but this is how I feel, and I respect how you feel as well. So we need to be able to come out of fanboyism as well. We need to be able to step away from what we think is right, what we think is, should be, and try to understand where the other person is coming from. Even if it is a sort of narrow-minded view, they're entitled to that. I mean, they have their opinion, and if they don't like something, then they don't like something. You can't change that. What you can change are the inconsistencies in their facts that they have. If something is fact, and they believe that it shouldn't stand because of this wrong fact that they've absorbed, then you can tell them, no, that's not what it is, it's this. That's what needs to be changed. But other than that, opinions are everyone's as they are. So that's what I feel.
I think there is a quote to it, like, you're entitled to your own opinions, but you're not entitled to your own facts. So essentially, that's what it boils down to. I just checked my PlayStation library. I still have Persona 5 sitting there. I have to download and play it again because I played it halfway. I have the save file with me, but I just couldn't continue it for XYZ reasons that I cannot recall. So I think that's one game that I want to replay again. I think that's the kind of, in fact, for me, I cannot typecast myself into a type of gaming. I enjoy RPGs. I enjoy action games. I've been into sports simulators like FIFA, like UFC, like all the North American sports. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has to be explored, but that doesn't necessarily mean I can pick a game apart like you can. So you, sir, are very skilled. Speaking of something that divides the community is the rise of battle royale style video games. I mean, you have one game after another. You got your PUBGs, you got your Fortnites, you got so many up and coming games. I think there's another game which a friend of mine, someone who helps us out at GameKheyl, Mr. Humbledink, recommended. It's basically a battle royale game, but you can use ammunition and weapons. Simultaneously, you can turn into a zombie and then turn other players into zombies. I don't know what it's called. It's something that blew my mind completely. But simultaneously, there is a lot of resistance from the traditional video game players. I mean, that's something that is currently riding a very high wave right now. But do you think it's going to peter out, or is this going to be the future of esports?
Okay, so it's interesting that you mentioned that, was because with Battle Royale, I personally have dipped my toes into it as well. I mean, who hasn't at this point? But the thing is that, Battle Royale has something very similar to what directly preceded it, which was MOBA games, which was games like League of Legends and Dota. Because prior to them, these two games were like one of the most played in North America and all over the world, and they had a huge scene, right? So a lot of people were basically saying that, this is the future of esports, and they had these huge prize pools. Dota 2 has like a $40 million prize pool, which is enormous, which is huge. And it's natural to see people say that this is the future, because there's so much riding on it, there's so much that's being invested on it. With Battle Royale, you have to see that, the sort of appeal that it holds for players, right? So it's a game that you can play with your friends, right? It's a game that is a sort of like a turn on the common FPS that you play, the first person shooters. And one of the most important things about a battle royale, one of the things that really appeals to a lot of people, and myself included, is that if for some reason you're playing and you're wiped out, you can easily pick up and go into another game right there and then. You don't need to wait for anything. You don't need to have anything holding you back. You can just pick up and go. And that, I believe, is something that appeals to a lot of people, and that's a great take. I mean, you don't find a lot of online competitive sports where that allow you to do that. With battle royales, they've come a long way now. I mean, it started with PUBG. It started with Fortnite, right? And those games have now been long played, and we've seen so many more that have gone in the same fashion. Like, you have your successes like Apex Legends. You've had your you've had your normal newcomers like Vampire the Masquerade. You have Valorant. Obviously, Valorant is a bit of a different take on it. It's more like a mixture of MOBA and CS:GO. So that's a completely different. So that you wouldn't really classify that as a battle royale.
In fact, no. My bad. I think Apex Legends would probably be more appropriate towards that. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So you have Apex Legends, you have this sort of stuff. You have the new Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy's First Soldier, which is a game that I just recently got. Like, I think about a week ago, I got to know that it's.
I think Free Fire also falls in that category. Yeah.
Free Fire absolutely does fall in that category, right? And then you have your failures like the Culling and the Culling 2. So those games, they failed as well. And you've seen that like, it's been a while. It's been like a good, I believe, like 5 years almost, 5-6 years since we've had Battle Royale, and you see that. The genre has now sort of like, it is reaching that sort of plateauing, but it's still diversifying. It's still changing things up. Like, you look at Apex Legends, that brought to the table something that we hadn't really seen with a lot of games. Is that, you obviously go in squads, right? And you get respawns. There's a lot of stuff in that game, like wall running mechanics and like this fast-paced action that you don't really see in normal PUBG or Fortnite. There are a lot of games that are changing stuff, and the one that you just mentioned, that where you can change into a zombie and start infecting other people. So though you could see that this genre, which was birthed right in front of us, is now sort of evolving. It's diversifying, right? And it's not really going to be going away anytime soon, right? Just like MOBA games, which are still being played today, right? This is not going anywhere. This is still going to be played like 10 years down the line, and I can guarantee you that. The way that it's going to be played might be a little bit different, right? Because there's obviously new things that are going to come out, and some things that work, some things that don't work, right? And we're constantly going to see the big players evolve. Fortnite did its chapter 2. Fortnite did a lot of different things. Apex Legends completely changed the game for them. And you're going to see a lot more changes like that. But in core essence, right, the sort of exposure that it's had in areas such as like India or Pakistan or, the Southeast Asia, or you had, your Fortnite, world champion who was a kid. A 17-year-old kid who played one of the biggest, tournaments of Fortnite in the world, and I believe they walked away with around $3 million or something. I might not be, I might not be right on that, but that's basically, yeah, it was more than that. So, and that's the sort of stuff that you wouldn't really see before. And seeing it now is really great, because the esports community, the esports in general, is like a huge $1 trillion industry. There's a lot of money to go around, right? And people would obviously love to invest in something that they see is new and something that they see will capture the imagination of new gamers. Fortnite was that. Before that, League of Legends was that. Dota to this day is still that, because there are so many people that plunk into it that you wouldn't believe. I have spent hundreds of dollars into Dota, right? So, and I contribute to that big ass prize pool, so I know that. So that's basically how it is. I believe that this is contributing to the future of esports, right? It's not the be all end all. It's another aspect to it, and it's going to help evolve and develop the community. It's going to help evolve and develop the games that come after it, because they're going to be taking the same models. They're going to be taking some of the same principles and basing their events, their games, their structures along it. So the recent Battle Royale, craze that we've had, I think it's done, as much as I would like to sort of like rail against it because I'm not a big fan, I'd still say it's done good for the community.
Well, the way I see or approach this is the fact that something like Dota, despite of the fact that there are a lot of other video games coming out which have overshadowed, for the lack of a better term, Dota, but at the same time it hasn't really taken off the shine completely because the prize pool is still growing. I think, like you mentioned, the community is growing at a very exponentially rapid pace, and it's probably going to continue to do that because there's a lot of money that is being pumped into this. Like, I remember one of the bigger banks in the world have now started loaning money out to esports companies, which is something that has never happened before. Like, imagine an esports company getting a credit line from a bank for them to establish an esports event, because now it's turned into a viable business option. Now, when you have financial sector, which would only take risk if they know there is a return on investment that they're going to receive, they're only going to plug money in that way. Now, when you see corporations like some of the biggest multinationals in Pakistan or anywhere else in the world trying to put their hands into gaming, they don't necessarily know how to approach it. They don't know where to spend their money, which games to target. And what they rely on are these independent contractors. The first thing they would suggest to them is, let's do a tournament. I mean, it's great to have that in the community. There's a very good prize pool, but in the long run, it doesn't sustain anything. It doesn't help the community in the long run. It only benefits to one or two teams which are playing for the keeps, but for everyone else who has participated, it doesn't really do much. And this is a conversation I had with GameKheyl a few weeks ago, and they want to create a systematic model where every esports athlete who wants to pursue this as a profession has a mean income at the very least of rupees 70,000 a month, which I believe would be good enough for a person to sustain themselves. But the question begs then is, how do you ensure that in an environment where your sponsors are requiring, let's say, immediate validation, and you have these individuals and these corporations in esports who are then recommending these corporations that instead of just, having a long-term event, just put your money in, we're going to do one event and that's going to be it. So for me as a business grad, that does not seem like a very viable option. But that's my take on it. How do you perceive it? And if you had the option of changing things up, how would you do that?
Right. So I understand where businesses are coming from. Obviously, if they want to invest, they want to see a good return on investment on that. They want to see that, the event that we put our money in, right? This is the sort of exposure that I got. This is how much advertising, this is how much audience we got in front of. And this is the sort of revenue that we generated from it. This is how much our sponsors helped us. This is how much we helped them, that sort of stuff. So, that obviously does come with like a big event and all that. But I feel that, just doing events for the sake of doing events and, to sort of like get that return on investment isn't really the way to go. I mean, that gets you in the short term, but then what about the long term? And I feel that one of the better models to be able to work on is that, we need to have some sort of systematic framework in which it's not just players competing, it's players growing. Right. And the way that comes is you don't just have players play each other. You have players train. You have players guide them on what the best business decisions would be. Right. And that sort of information can only come from someone who's been a part of that community. It comes from the players who work day in, day out on this, in their pastime or as a professional, right? They're the ones who are able to give you the best advice on how to proceed with these sort of things. It's not some sort of corporation. It's not some sort of other company or some, independent contractor that's going to do it. It's the player. The player is going to tell you what they want and what would be good for other players like them. And most importantly, the players would also be able to let you know, all right, this is what we need. This is what our people need to be able to put on a good show. They need professional training, right? They need good equipment, good environment, right? Good competition, good people to play off of, whether they're locally or internationally, right? They need that sort of thing. It's not about exposure. It's about getting up to the mark and building yourself up. Exposure is something that comes with it when it's based on your performance and the sort of representation that you have, right? But in order for you to be able to get there, you need to be good at it. And that's what I feel that we need to also focus on. Right now, one of the biggest problems that our community has is that we hold events in the FGC, right? But we don't have local sponsors. We don't have people sponsoring us. And this is something that Babakar Haider, Soul Dragger, has talked about in his past interview as well. In that the most important thing for us right now is that these people who are playing, just as GameRed is doing right now, saying that, every player needs to have like a base income and they should turn that into a viable profession for themselves. These players also need that sort of support to make sure that they keep investing into their game. One of the players in our community, he was one of the first people that I talked to when before I started commentating, but when I was in Maniacs, right? And this guy was so good at Tekken that it was a wonder that he wasn't sponsored. He played day in, day out. He was he used to serve at tables at Flatty's Hotel, right? And this guy lost his job, but he still kept playing Tekken, right? And he played it so well, and he plays it to this day, right? And for the longest time, he was struggling to get a sponsor, right? Finally, someone got him a sponsorship, like someone, decided to sponsor him, a person in Bahrain, I believe, or somewhere else in the Middle East. They got him they got him sponsored, and now he's able to host tournaments over here. He's held a Tekken online challenge dojo event, which is let's say a Tekken Bandai Namco sponsored event, right? And anyone who wins that gets points into their league of the Tekken World Tournament, the Tekken World Tour. So he hosted one of those events from just getting his first sponsor, right? And he is, he's doing great for himself right now, and he has future plans. So that's the sort of vision that these players have. They've been playing a game for so long that they know how games work. They know how the community works. They know what to do within the community to be able to promote new players, to be able to give great returns on investments, and to be able to develop things. So we have people like that. We have people who are still unsponsored, who play their hearts out, and we just don't have a mechanism for them to be able to get that sort of the resources to be able to train better, to be able to represent themselves better, right? To be able to get that exposure, right? And this is what I feel that our government even needs to be able to step in and do. We need to have a solid framework, a sort of, let's say off the top of my head, this is an idea I've been mulling, that, we need to have a registry of players, right? A registry of players within the government, right? Players come in and get registered, and for getting registered, right, they will obviously, contribute into the government, but in return, what they will get is government support for trainers, for equipment, for visas, for events, that sort of stuff. And they go in as representatives of not just, the game or some local community, but of Pakistan. And that is what we need. The government needs to sort of create that sort of mechanism. People need to create that sort of mechanism, because our players are out here. They've been out here for years. They will continue to be out here. What they need is to get further.
And I think this is a topic that me and Babakar expanded on pretty deeply when it comes to the role of government in actually promoting esports in Pakistan. Now, the problem with a country like ours is that there's so much else on the table for institutions like the government to resolve before they can actually get through that pile into having esports, giving it that kind of recognition. And this is another thing we discussed before the interview started. And that is, strike the iron when it's hot. And right now is as good a time as any to invest into esports, because the returns that you're going to get out of this is going to be 10 or 20 folds of what you've initially invested. So again, maybe this is the perfect time. But again, the approach that the government has taken is a mystery, to be honest. I mean, right now you have the government saying that they've recognized esports athletes as actual athletes. but simultaneously there's little to nothing that's being done on that front. I mean, there is a Facebook page of Pakistan Esports Foundation or something along that lines. There are individuals who either call themselves or consider themselves the custodian of the community, and they visit different symposiums around the world. But there's very little or nothing to show for when it comes to something actually being done on the ground to promote esports. So with the limited means that the government has at this point in time, with everything else which is going on, which is no secret to anyone, how do you propose the government goes about promoting esports? I mean, there is a definite dearth of funds. So how do you tackle this beast?
Okay, so I don't pretend to know all, again, as in like I'm not the expert on this by any means, but I am a guy with ideas. And the idea that I have basically is that what we need right now for this mechanism to work is sort of like we need ambassadors who aren't just there for the show of it, who aren't there just to go to a symposium and talk to people about it. We need some people who actually, who can represent us, who are part of the community, who not just our people, but people around the world obviously know. Because obviously when they start talking, people listen. We need people like that. We do not need people who are bureaucrats. We do not need people who, who are wearing suits and work in a government institution day by day, right? Just throwing out random policies or not even caring or just, trying to just sit back and, drive things on autopilot. We need representatives from within the community. People like Arslan Ash, right? People who have played their hearts out, who have represented the world on the world stage. Fate Khan and Farzeen, right? Who are right now going to the US as we speak to compete at an event in CEO. Best of luck to our boys. So we need people like that in, representing us as Pakistanis in the government, because they understand how these things work. They've seen models around the world, right? And they know what sort of mechanisms to bring to the table here, right? More importantly, right now, when we talk about striking while the iron is hot, right? So this is a point that I made with Babakar when we were talking earlier, was that, a while ago, was that the international exposure that we got when Arslan Ash won Evo, both Evos, right? That was our breakout moment, right? That was the thing that just shot us up into the stratosphere, right? So that is a wave that we need to ride, because that wave is ultimately going to crest. That even though he's been shot up to the stratosphere, there might come a time then when things will start slowing down. This thing will start falling down. And before that happens, we need to make the best of the opportunities. We need to build our community, right? We need to build our viewership. We need to build our players. We need to build things over here so that we can sustain ourselves. Because this cannot be a one-off thing that Arslan goes and then that's it. People forget about Pakistan until the next star goes out, and then people start remembering, oh, all right, Pakistan has great players. Sumail from Dota was also our landmark moment. However, there wasn't really any contribution of Pakistan itself, even though he registers himself as a Pakistani. But Sumail was also a breakout moment for us. But if you see right now, is there are only 2 players from Pakistan in the entire Dota pro circuit, and that is Sumail and his brother Yavar. That's it. We need more people like that in that community. We have a Dota community over here. We've had events. Mountain Dew has sponsored them, right? But why are these players not out there? Why are they not representing our country? It's because the mechanism isn't there. It's because these players, right, they find no way to be able to, sort of like build a bridge between their country and abroad and for the next generation. Right. So all our stars from back in the day who went to CSGO events to the Worlds, right, who have competed in like international tournaments, right, now, unfortunately, they've just, left gaming. They've started families. They've been doing desk jobs and everything. When these people were supposed to be our idols, they were supposed to carry us forward into the next generation of gaming. We were supposed to have like CSGO teams go out abroad, and we had so much potential. Like Counter-Strike was played immensely back in the day over here. And right now, unfortunately, we have little to no representation on that, and which is really sad. Even though the game is just completely going, it's having its events abroad. Our government has failed on that front, and I'd say that yes, the government does have a lot of stuff to be able to look into. Like they have a lot on their plate, right? We have rising prices, right? We have the COVID pandemic going on, which is destroying the economy. We have a lot of other things to contend with. We have defense issues. We have financial issues. We have foreign policy that needs to be fixed up. But at the same time, we also have to wonder, when is this particular issue of, our representation as a representative of Pakistan, as an ambassador, when is this going to be addressed, right? All we focus on is the Pakistani cricket team, but other avenues of sports that we said would be important, what about them? When are they going to get their when are they going to get their time in the sun? You can't have that unless you have people who are committed to it. The most committed to it are the players. So players need to be part of that structure, of that mechanism that you create. They need to be a part of whatever you're building, because they're the ones who can build it the best.
Yeah. I think there is a quote from one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies where Jack Sparrow says to the character that Orlando Bloom plays, and he says, if you were looking for an opportune moment, that was it. So you don't want to place yourself in a position where you, in retrospect, you'd be like, oh, I missed this opportunity when the iron was hot. I could have made my move. I could have struck it well, but I think that's essentially the trajectory that we've seen. Especially, I'm glad that you touched on Dota, because that was a very big opportunity that we lost. Because if I'm not mistaken, Sumail was someone who used to live in Karachi, about a couple of kilometers from where I live, and the Dota scene there is still thriving and good. But here's me being the devil's advocate, because while I was doing interviews with GameKheyl, I've been in touch with a few corporations, and there's a very big corporation which has sponsored quite a lot of athletes, both in esports and otherwise. And the biggest thing they say is another problem that is with the attitude of these athletes. I mean, now the problem is when you're coming in from impoverished backgrounds or from humble means, as soon as you receive some sort of incentive, your egos get inflated to another level. And by that, you lose your consistency and you lose the reason because of which you've been promoted or to such a high echelon. And interestingly enough, this is a trend we see in cricket. I mean, you have some amazing cricketers who go off the rails once they receive money. And before you even reach the tip of your potential, everything else is lost. And then the game is interesting anymore because the sponsor is putting pressure on you to be consistent and you cannot deliver results on them. So is there something that needs to be fixed on the end of your esports athletes as well? Or do you think at this point in time, we need to fix the system first through which this entire pool of talent is coming through to institutionalize a right mindset? So where do you think the buck stops?
I think, you really hit the nail on the head over here with the point about player attitudes, right? And with touching upon the Pakistani cricket team as well, because these are some things that, I would definitely like to discuss. Now, you're absolutely right where you say that, player attitudes get inflated, and that's a byproduct of, finding that success, right? When you come from impoverished backgrounds, when you come from like humble beginnings, or, you're sort of like in that sort of environment where you've been put down, and then all of a sudden you're a champ. You're getting eyes, you're being commended for your performance. All of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, I'm this big thing. I'm a big shot, right? So you tend to lose that humility. You tend to lose that sort of sense of self, and you get really inflated in your ego. That's something that I definitely do agree is one thing that can take us down, right? And I absolutely abhor the fact that it is prevalent in our society. It is prevalent in our communities. The way to be able to counter it is what I would say the Pakistani cricket team did recently. If we look at it, right? So let's look at the recent T20 World Cup that happened, right? So Pakistan went 5-0 in the Super 12. Right. So we had consistently great performance across the board. Right. And then we get into the semifinals against Australia and we lost. Right. And there were a lot of factors to that people would say. The biggest fingers would be pointed to Hassan Ali for dropping his catches. But one of the things that really struck with me was this one video that was shared on social media after the team had lost. It was Babar Azam and Matthew Hayden in that room, in their locker room, right afterwards, where Babar Azam was talking to his teammates, motivating them and telling them that no one is going to point fingers at anyone else, right? This is a team effort. Anyone who points the fingers will be answerable to me, right? So that is where Babar Azam stopped being a player and became a captain. He became an authority figure where he told everyone, this is how you're supposed to behave. This is how you're supposed to be it. And that is, I believe, what is needed within our community over here in the fighting game circuit, where we have players who find the success, right? But then they don't know how to deal with it properly. And for that, they need counseling. They need, like I mentioned earlier, in that sort of framework, training does come in, people who they can train with. It also brings into question people who can let them know what to do with that sort of success, because that is something that requires deep counseling. You have to talk to people and share with them and, get them to understand that, you've gotten the success and you don't know what to do with it, and you feel like, you're on top of the world. And that's when another person comes in and tells you, right, this is the constraints. This is how you're supposed to be with this much power, right? You are in front of the world right now, but obviously with that comes responsibility. This sort of education in terms of responsibility as a player, as an icon that you've become now, that needs to be instilled in players. We see in the US or in other places, in Korea, in Japan, especially in Japan, their players are absolutely so humble. There's absolutely very little beef between them. And every time that they play, they get up and they shake each other's hands and they have drinks afterwards. They have a good time, even though they were fighting tooth and nail and they lost, and one's bigger, the other's not. But that's the sort of environment that we also need to create. We need to create a place where people know that this is a game, right? And even if I'm good at it, right, I have some responsibility as a player, as a human being, to, sort of realize what I need to do in this sort of situation. I need to be a upstanding person. I need to be an upstanding representative of the community, of the society, of myself, of where I come from. This is the sort of thing that needs to be instilled in them. And unless that happens, we're going to keep seeing people who piss off sponsors, who, sort of put them on edge, where players, and we keep hearing from people that, players' attitudes are not right. That's something that we're going to have to face if we don't fix this.
I think your answer has absolutely summarized everything that we've been trying to propagate here at GameKheyl. I mean, the community itself is on hinges of individuals who are the face of the community. I mean, behind Arslan Ash, there's about 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 players that no one has heard of. But again, the responsibility lies on these individuals who, some of them we've been fortunate to have on GameKheyl. And what I'm very optimistic about, at least when it comes to Tekken, at the very least, is the fact that there's so much humility in this community. I mean, I've tried to get in touch with the Valorant community here. I've tried to get in touch with the CSGO community, but easily Tekken community and the way they carry themselves, the way they promote each other. I mean, if you look at Fate Khan stream sometimes, there are players at the arcade playing each other. And on a given day, that would be, like you mentioned, it could be a World Tour final. So that's the kind of talent that you currently have, and the humbleness. I mean, you could hear in the background, there's a lot of banter going on as well in Punjabi, with my limited understanding, but they're having fun. They're enjoying their games. And at the end of the day, they know everything's going to be all right. It's not going to be anything personal. And this is one of the reasons why they've been able to attract international sponsors. And it's a shame that not enough eyes locally have been bestowed on these individuals. So best wishes to all of them. I mean, some of them are currently traveling to the US, like Nosherwan mentioned. So best wishes from GameKheyl to all of them, and hope to see you guys bring glory to the country, to all of us, to the community. And if not, we'll still support you till the end of time. Just coming towards the business end of this interview, I mean, again, there's a lot of things that you've done in your career as your hobbies and things that you would want to pursue, I believe, if possible, as a career in gaming, if that comes as an option. But again, that entire journey has to have some individuals that have facilitated that growth for you. I mean, you've already named a couple of them previously, but if there are any names that you would want to give shout outs to, any individuals that you would want to recognize, and also any individuals you believe we should keep an eye out for, or maybe have them over as guests at GameKheyl. If you'd like to name some names, now's your time.
All right, thank you for that, because I actually have a list. I prepared it last time when I saw Soul Dragger's stream, right, for his interview, and I was like, all right, you know what? I definitely have to come prepared for this, because I want to do justice to the people that I work with. And what better person to, start off with than Soul Dragger? I mean, Babakar Haider has been one of the most accepting, one of the friendliest people that I've met in this past year. Right. And he's been such an inspiration. Like, I really admire the sort of effort that the guy puts in. Right. I really admire that he's been doing this for such a long time. His passion and his love for the game is something that, I really associate with, I resonate with. And he's like a brother. So I really am proud of Soul Dragger. And I think that, he deserves all the recognition and all the love that he can get. Another person that I would like to thank is the owner of Maniacs Gaming Hub, Zamin Abbas. He was one of the first people that I got in touch with when I started getting into the FGC. And he's always been a real pleasure to be around, to be talking to, to sort of be in the presence of. He's been so supportive of all our players. He's been giving us, he's been keeping the things running in Lahore for us for as much as he can. I mean, he's had personal crises, and even in those times, he's been there for the community. He's kept his doors open. He's had players welcomed into his place. All the tournaments that we host, all the tournaments that we play, all the day-to-day activities, all the streams that we have, it's all thanks to him, and he's done so much, and we're really grateful for him. The third person that I'd like to mention is basically the guy that I mentioned earlier, who recently got our sponsor. His name is Irfan Bhatti, and he goes by the handle of Yugi, right? And this guy people have a lot of issues with his attitude, right? Because he's not really the best when it comes to interpersonal skills. I mean, like, he definitely have fun with you at your expense, but trust me when I say that there is no guy who would be deserving of success as much as he would, because he's worked really hard. The sort of struggle and the sort of journey that he's had is something that is incredible. I really admire him. I consider him a really great friend. He was one of the first people that I talked to when I went to Maniacs, and trust me, I sat with him, and for the next hour and a half, he just kept talking to me and went on with it, and we had a great time. So ever since then, another person I'd mention is the same person that Soul Dragger mentioned, a player named the John. Adil Sheikh is his name, and this guy is someone who would give Arslan Ash a run for his money. He is a really incredible player. He plays on a completely different level. He is like, if you consider Pakistan to have a style, this is a person who has gone into Pakistan S tier style. Like, he's made a completely different style in Pakistan on his own. And the way that he plays is, incredible. I really enjoy hanging out with him, and just to be able to see him in action and just have fun and break people down is, it's something to behold. OS Honey is another person that I'd like to thank a lot. I mean, I've had limited interactions with OS, but he is literally a really nice guy. Very fun, very genuine, right? He's been on GameKheyl, and I did have the pleasure of, going through his interview, and it was really nice to be able to learn where he came from, and I'd love to be able to hear more about it. There is a player that is in the KOF circuit called Zohaib, goes by the name of Tox. I'd like to give a shout out to him. Another player who has been in the circuit for quite a while and recently helped us host a tournament called Imran Champ. This gentleman has been in the KOF circuit for a very long time, right? He has a really good passion, good love for the community, and a really nice, soft-spoken guy. I really love the fact that, he took out his time, his effort to come to Maniacs to put together a tournament of the KOF 15 beta that we had. We had just 2 days to play that game. Right? Just 2 or 3 days. And in that, he arranged a tournament and he made sure everyone had fun with it. And we really enjoyed ourselves. Really a really respected figure. Another KOF player, Sami9, who has also been great. His brother is in Indonesia, tunes into almost every stream of ours that we have. And this guy is just a wizard with KOF. He's been so good with 98. He's been our champion. Really amazing stuff. And, we have good hopes for him because right now we're going to start practicing our players for KOF 15, trying to get them into some international tournaments. And he's looking like to be a top contender. So definitely someone that we want. On Tekken side of things, there is a young player called Hafiz Tanveer, right? I had the pleasure of watching some of his games, and he brought out some really, really amazing stuff. He's a young lad, right, who went up against some of the biggest names that we have over here, and he certainly gave them a tough time. It's really great to see young people. Like, we're old now. I mean, I'm in my 30s. Aves, Honey, and everyone else, we're, reaching our 30s, and everyone is really old. But it's great to see underage talent, like people who are in the 18, 19, coming up and, really having this love for the game and, showing us a great time. These guys, it's really amazing to see the new talent. And we have high hopes for them. And we want to be able to create a platform, create a mechanism for them, so that they can go out and they can live those dreams that we probably couldn't. Similarly, in Vain, we have another player called Mohsin Shooter. He's a fellow from Gujranwala, I believe, but he's sponsored by an organization called Take Flight, and one of our really cool players of this one character called Lee Chaolan, which is a really tough character to play, but so great to watch, right? And another player that we have is called Kashi Snake. He's part of Team Ashes, the team that Arslan Ash helped mold. That's a pretty big team, but Kashi Snake stands out as one of the standout guys. Really nice guy, really fun guy to watch. He's got some wicked tech of Akuma in the game that we've seen. All of these people, right, I would love to be able to see them on GameKheyl, on other platforms, get that recognition, and to be able to share their stories, to be able to talk about all these, their journey and their views on the game and on the scene. These are the people that I would love to be able to talk about, and I believe that's about it. So yeah, those are the people that I really respect. Oh yeah, one final person, not a player, but someone from Karachi who has been with us through day one, who has helped me since day one, is a gentleman called Musab Junaidi, right? This guy is currently the proprietor of Junaidi's Pizzeria, and I believe he is one of the most passionate people in our FGC as a viewer, as a person who wants to contribute, who wants to sponsor events, that sort of thing. Always helping out with advice, with encouragement, tuning into our streams, messaging us on Twitter, on social media, asking us what he can do. And this person, even though I haven't met him personally, right, I am really appreciative of his efforts and what he's done. And obviously we have our boys who are going right now, Faith Khan, Farzeen, Arslan Ash. These are our heroes. These are our representatives who are going to CEO right now. And I really wish them the best of luck. And I look forward to seeing much more from our side going to events like this.
By the way, the funniest thing that you mentioned is Junaid's, because I absolutely love their pizza. Me and my wife, more often than not, we just go to their place, have that pizza. I didn't know he was a gaming fan. I think it's high time I go get myself a pizza and a business meeting with that person, because
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean,
Yes.
again, shout out to Junaid's. If I tell my wife, she'll get very excited because their pizzas are awesome. Also, for everyone else who SilverFox just mentioned, if you ever want a platform where you can have a few discussions with us, if you want to get your name out there, GameKheyl is just one of those platforms which will always be available to you. Our doors are always going to be open for you. And again, all you need to do is just get in touch with us. I've been trying very hard. Faith Khan can attest to that I've been trying to reach out to a lot of you. My biggest reservation to each of you, if you're listening to this, is the fact that you guys are very shy. So break out of the bracket. हम उर्दू में बात कर लेंगे, हम पंजाबी भी कोशिश कर लेंगे बात करने की, बस आ जाओ तुम लोग मजाक से.
Okay, I'm telling you right now, I'll try my best to put you in touch with all of these guys, because I personally would love to see them on this sort of platform. I would love for them to share their stories. Zaman, Yugi, Mohsen Shooter, Tanveer, all these people, right? They deserve to be out there. Musab should come out as well. And you should definitely get in touch with him, because the guy is nothing short of a gem. And I believe he can give you that sort of insight from a spectator point of view, and give you that sort of feedback that would be really, really vital for the community.
And I think in terms of a few discussions, which I will not reveal on air, but things that we were discussing in the background, I think these are the individuals who can give us very good insight into how we can go about doing those things, and hopefully we can have a very good update for the community in the future. Who knows? I mean, gaming, when you talk about GameKheyl, it's always going to be on the forefront of anything that is going to bring eyeballs to the community, something that we can grow with, and most importantly, have fun while doing it. So again, for anyone who wants to be either a part of this,
Okay, so see, that's the thing. That's final thing that I wanted to be able to do. I'm really sorry I'm interrupting you, but this is the final thing that I wanted to do. Right? If there's anyone else that I want to thank, it's you, right? So I would like to thank you, Naveed, and GameKheyl for this sort of effort that you're putting in, this sort of initiative that you've taken, because our fighting game community right now, our internet, our community of gaming, of people who are interested in this sort of thing, right? They're desperate for, a platform, for someone to listen to them, for someone to talk to them, and, help them get to where they want. And this is what you're doing, and this is what GameKheyl is doing. This is an initiative that not a lot of people over here are doing right now. You're one of the first ones to doing it, and it is such a bold and is such a profound endeavor, right? There's hardly anyone that I've talked to who thinks along these aspects of how to grow the community, of how to sort of like build stuff over here, to create some good content, to create a platform for people where they can not only share, but they can also enjoy. They can view, they can, they can basically, develop as people, as players, and everything. And GameKheyl doing that is an incredible, incredible gesture. And thank you so much to be, to do these interviews, to talk to these people, because I'm sure that they appreciate it. I'm sure, every one of us who's watching appreciates it. And, we couldn't be happier. Thank you so much for everything that you've done.
SilverFox, the pleasure is all mine. Frankly, for me, having a very good conversation is its own reward. I mean, the kind of stories, the kind of experiences that people get to share with me, with all the viewers who watch these interviews, I think they're a reward within themselves. Again, this is not an endeavor I choose to do because it has some sort of incentive coming out of it. If anything, there's a lot of investment that has been done on this. But at the end of the day, if this has the relevant outcome coming out of it, if it has the intention of even bringing one person into the fold, making them understand what the Pakistani community is, because whenever I'm having these conversations with foreign gamers, what they refer to are a lot of interviews. So for instance, most of my audience for Awais Hari's interviews are from the US, and I can name the individuals who watched those interviews, and now they're invested into the Pakistani Tekken scene, even though a few days ago they didn't have absolutely nothing to do with the community. So for them to recognize the Pakistani gaming scene, even though if it's just 1, 2, or even 100 people, I think that's as limited as the success that is through GameKheyl. I believe that's the kind of impact that we have to start doing, and hopefully one of these things will start snowballing, and maybe help us do other things. So for us, it's not about generating revenue to make ourselves successful. It's when we have more money, we can get to do more things and we will get to have more fun. And till we don't have that, we're still going to have fun with the limited means that we have. So I really appreciate you saying all of the nice things that you said, even more than what we actually deserve. But we are going to do our best to make sure that the content out there is to the right and relevant talent. Just one final question before I let you go, because it's pretty late in the night and I'm pretty sure you're a working man. So just a final thought on, again, for anyone who is a part of any community or any professional endeavor, you must have some sort of goals in your mind or where you would want to see yourself personally, because I think we went in depth into where you would like to see this community move forward when it comes to FGCs. But as a person, as a content creator, as a commentator, what are your goals? What are your aspirations, if you'd like to share it here at GameKheyl?
Oh, sure. I'd love to be able to share that. So I I didn't even know that, like the community like this could exist in this form. I mean, I was just made aware of how well knit and tightly integrated everything was just a couple of months ago, right? But if I'm being very honest, this is a community that I would love to be, consistently a part of for, as long as I can foresee in the future, because it's about giving back to something that I love. And I've loved since I was a kid. Back in the days when I played Tekken 2 on my PlayStation as a kid, I always thought that, all right, this is going to build into something. I'm going to play with my friends and I'm going to do good and we're going to have a good time. And this is starting from then, all the games, the fighting games, the MOBA games, the shooters, all those games that I've played, they culminated into this one moment where I'm able to now do something for the community. I'm able to give something back to all those people who have that experience, who have something like that. I hope to continue to entertain everyone with my content, with my commentary. I hope to be able to one day, roll into maybe, hosting events together for the community, to be able to help uplift the community, maybe create a platform. That's something that I would love to be able to do. I want to aspire to be able to create my own platform, sponsor maybe my own players, because I know that that's exactly what these guys need. They need people from within them to rise up, to support, to create events, to create banners, brands, platforms for them to work on, to be able to go out there. Because these guys, what I know that the players who are dedicated over here, right, they are enough. Their skill is enough to prove them. They just need that opportunity. They just need that opportunity to be able to go out there. And I would love to one day be a pillar of the community who creates those sort of opportunities for them. So it would give me immense pleasure to be able to create a system, create something, anything that can help these players get to where they dream to be, to where they deserve to be. So that's basically what I have in mind. So hopefully over the next years, inshallah, I hope so, that comes to bear.
Again, for all of the things that you've said that you aspire to do, always remember that you'll have GameKheyl support throughout all of this, whether through something tangible or something that you would like to share with us in the future. We would definitely like to have you again in any other way, shape, or form here at GameKheyl. I mean, there's a lot of things that we discussed previously, so hopefully we'll get to continue that as well. And again, I mean, it's really refreshing to see that there are individuals like yourself, like Babakar, like the gamers that we've interviewed, like the content creators that we've interviewed, who are so invested in just making sure that something tangible and something great comes out of this. I mean, if there's so many individuals, you just have to think it has to work. It has to come to some sort of a point where we can all just sit back and just look and just marvel at what we've been able to create together. I mean, that would be the end goal. But before that, it's all going to be grind. It's going to be a lot of hard work. And trust me when I say this, GameKheyl is not going to shy away from that. And from what I can gather, SilverFox is going to continue doing what he does best in order to make sure that the opportunities gather for people around him and also in the FGC community. So again, for FCG community, you have some really great people that you can look forward to. Like Nosherwan just mentioned, you need some big role models in the community who can be the leaders. And I think with the demeanor and the things that he's mentioned, Nosherwan is right up there if you're looking for someone to look up to. So it was an absolute pleasure to have you here today. It was very enlightening to hear so many things, not just for the FGC, but FCG, but also for the gaming in general, your own expertise on different things. Any final thoughts if you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I say that, we had a very interesting discussion, and I really appreciate you bringing me onto this platform, because I would like to do any little bit of for the community that I can, because this is a community that I feel is very near and dear to me. It's me finally giving back to something that I really love and really hold close to my heart. Gaming is every one of us. We've been playing since we were kids, and we've been playing from any amount of time. We play because we love it. We play because we want to. And the fact that we had this conversation, we talked about all these things at length. I feel that we need to have more of this, and it's been really great to be able to be a part of that. So thank you so much for all the support, for all the recognition, for all the help that you've given. And I really hope that in the future, GameKheyl goes way beyond and does all those amazing things that you've envisioned.
We'll say Ameen and Inshallah to that. Again, thank you so much for being here. For everyone watching, this is the kind of content we do at the moment. There's going to be more diversity in the future. But if you like what we're doing right now, you know the drill. Like, share, subscribe if you like this. I think it's not going to be your responsibility. I'm just tired of asking now. So just press that like button if you like it. If you don't, all we need are your prayers. Do what you like. Do what you love, and most importantly, do it consistently. That's the message we're going to end this interview with. And hopefully we'll see you guys again with another guest on GameKheyl. Hopefully we'll have Nosherwan again on GameKheyl in any other capacity, even as an interview. But for right now, this is going to be Naveed and Nosherwan AKA SilverFox signing out, and hope to see you guys again really soon. Peace.
Bye-bye. Peace.